Welcome to the Business Spotlight series. I'm Paul McCarthy, and today I'm joined by Charlotte Williams from Elysian. Charlotte, it's great to have you with us today. Can you start by telling us a bit about your business, please?
Yeah, sure. So Elysian, it's actually got a really long name. It's actually called Elysian Animal Assisted Therapy and Learning. And what we do is we work with children, young people, usually ages from 8 to 18. And it started as a therapeutic provision, working with children and people who where the primary need is anxiety. And then we've gradually evolved to now become an education provision as well. So we are farm based. We have three farms, one in Guildford in Surrey, one in near Leatherhead in Surrey, and one in Liss in Hampshire.
Okay, fantastic. And how did you get into this business? How did it all start for you?
Well, it started really sort of on a personal level, really, because we have my husband and I, we have three children ourselves. We worked in social care and mental health. And we had a horse interest. So our children got into horses. And we just really, really noticed the difference that the horses were making in their lives. We noticed when things were difficult, that when we were with the horses, the children that we had were able to really articulate their emotions better. They were able to talk about things that were going on, and just that sort of magical impact that the horses had. So that led us to sort of explore that more professionally. And we both went away and did some equine assisted psychotherapy training. So the idea was essentially to kind of share that magic really with children and people that we worked with. Um, and then that's how it all sort of started. So after we did the training, we decided that we would essentially kind of rent a field and do like almost like a little sideline where we do equine assisted psychotherapy with children and young people. As it happened, a local farm was for sale, and we did a business plan that we shared with some mortgage brokers who eventually to us find a way of purchasing a farm. And to pay the mortgage, we had to have a revenue for this farm. So we started a delivery yard, but with absolutely the intention of doing a therapy provision. So we started a delivery business. So that's when you look after other people's horses, and then we very gradually developed the farm to become a therapeutic provision. So we purchased the farm in 2015. We very, very slowly started the therapeutic provision. I think by sort of 2018, 19, it was starting to really thrive. And in the early days, really, we noticed that it's not just horses that has that magic ability to support children and people to feel better in a whole plethora of ways, really. So we went from just horses to goats to pigs to donkeys, sheep. Now we have reptile rooms with all sorts of creatures. I think we have like over 30 different species of animals, and and yeah, that's how it kind of very gradually grew. When we then gradually eliminated delivery, and the whole farm became an animal assisted therapeutic provision. What we noticed was children and people that were coming to us who were children and people with extreme anxiety. They weren't able to access any other provision, and it just wasn't enough. You have children and people who are isolated in their own homes, and they might not feel well enough to go to a shop or to go to any kind of group setting, but they were well enough to come to us. And we didn't feel that what we were providing was enough really to support children and people to progress onto life and opportunities and work. And I guess the local authorities notice the same. Can you provide more? Can you do more? We haven't got education for these young people. Can you provide education? And the only way to provide education was to become a registered independent school. So that's what kind of then put us on that path. So although we are very much an independent registered school with a Department for Education, we are farm based. So we do everything with children and people we do through the use of animal assisted activities. So yes, we have maths lessons, yes, we have English lessons, yes, we do science and all kinds of other cross curricular things, but it's all done utilizing the magic of animals in different ways. There's a million things. In fact, you can do the whole national curriculum. You can just do it out on the farm. It's just about being creative and transferring the learning outcomes into activities that you can do out on the farm. So you started with how did Elysian start? And I guess I got all the way to really now present time really. So what's then happened is I guess because of its successes, we have expanded because we're trying to make it more accessible. And the only way you can make it accessible is logistically making sure that children and people can get to you, which is why we're spreading out. Gradually, because a lot of young people have to travel quite far to get to us because there are no other provisions like us. So yeah, I'll pause now because you might want to ask another question rather than me just going on. Yeah.
So is it a sort of like a full-time thing when children or young people come to you, or is it just like an odd day?
You can't when it comes to registering as an education provision, you have to you're either in or you're out. Apart from tutoring at home, you can't provide some education really without being. You can't provide core education at least without being a registered provision. And the minute you are a registered provision and you take a young person on roll, then you are responsible for the whole education package, and you're responsible for their safeguarding, and you are responsible for making sure that at the very least you're working towards a full-time package. So that would mean full school hours Monday to Friday. That said, some of our young people aren't ready for that yet, so we do. Part of our selling point is it's okay not to be ready for that. We will just gradually work towards it. So they'll come to us and we'll work with their comfort zone and then gradually expand their comfort zone. So, and that might mean, we've had young people come to us for 50 minutes with their parents once a week, and then built it to twice a week, and then managed once a week without their parents, and then gradually build up to the point where they're now full-time education. So we've had young people come to us completely non-verbal, really frozen, not seen the inside of a school for 2, 3, 4, sometimes up to 10 years. And so your starting point always has to be as much as they can manage, and then you stretch that as you go, really. So yes, it is full-time provision, but not all children and people will start like that.
And is it through local authorities, or people come to you directly as well?
Yes. So most of our young people, for our term time provision, most of our young people come through EHCPs. We do also have other programs, which is, so we can provide therapy, which is an hour a week. We can provide a 2-hour sort of social comm sessions, which is quite often for where you have children and people who might be in mainstream setting, but they can't quite manage a full-time day. They might go to their school for the morning and they come to us for the afternoon. So it's more of a social comms. Then we also have alternative provision where young people come anything from 1 day to 4 days, where they have their actual core education at home or with another provision with the local authority. So we do kind of offer different programs, but yeah, forgotten your question now.
No, you answered it. And
good.
Obviously, I think children, young people have challenges and all sorts. Is this particularly targeted at any sort of particular challenges they might have? Does it work with?
Main one is anxiety for us. Of course, we do sometimes have young people with challenging behaviour because anxiety manifests in lots of different ways. We do, however, sort of have some limitations on the challenging behaviour we can manage on the farm because it is a farm. So we do have to obviously be able to have young people who can manage the environment safely. And also, if you are working with a cohort with really, really high anxiety, then we have to be careful to look after our cohort in terms of not having too much escalated behaviour around, because then it becomes counterproductive. The whole point is providing a safe space. That said, we have worked with quite a lot of different challenging behaviour, and we have got to a point where we have quite high success rate in sort of getting to a point where young people feel settled and safe on the farm, and the behaviour decreases.
And are there many of these sort of facilities around? Obviously, you said actually getting access to them is pretty hard. Is there any around the country?
There are facilities like us, you mean? Or
like you, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there's anyone quite like us. There are some similar, there are some further education like the Fountain Centre, and can't remember exactly where they are right now, but and there are lots of really good sort of equine assisted programs around. I don't think there's any other farm-based schools, as far as I'm aware. There are lots of schools with farm attached, and there's lots of schools who will have collaboratively work with a farm, or schools who have some animals and will really kind of utilize that. But I haven't to date learnt of any other actual farm-based, education provision yet. Might exist somewhere. We just haven't found them yet.
Okay, so it's pretty unique what you do then.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I suppose people watching this, well, what sort of areas do you cover?
We cover Surrey, Berkshire. We've had referrals from Sutton, West Sussex, Hampshire, and well, I guess anywhere within travel distance. So young people will travel up to an hour and a half sometimes to come to us. So yeah, so it's all about logistics, how they can travel, how far they are. The relatively new provision we have near Leatherhead will obviously open up for more accessibility, almost touching South London area. And the list provision means that, that there's a wider coverage around West Sussex, Hampshire. But yeah, we'll probably have more sites in the near future, I should think.
Okay, sounds that way. And has there been a particular person who's inspired you along your way?
Well, before I did this role, I worked for the local authority in a sort of user involvement role. So a lot of my time was spent just listening to and actioning the wishes and feelings of children and young people in terms of supporting shaping services and making changes within services to ensure that the children and young people's voice was heard. And I think that's probably my biggest inspiration, is that kind of feeling quite passionate about making sure that we're creating services that are actually going to work for children and young people. It's a bit like the saying, if you ask a fish to climb a tree, what's going to happen. So I think our provision I was inspired by children and young people.
Yeah.
I'm also quite inspired by my dad, because he's an entrepreneur, and he's a real go-getter. I'm not really into sort of celebrities and famous people, but I do quite often, hear inspiring people. And yeah, I'm doing a PhD at the moment in leadership and management, and there's like a million TED Talks that you have to listen to, and I think there's so much inspiring stuff out there, especially around like strategy and problem solving. And I listened to one the other day, which was really interesting. It was about, when we're problem solving as entrepreneurs or business managers, sometimes we focus too much on solving the problem, not realizing that sometimes it could be a different problem we need to solve. So one of the problems was that staff were complaining in a corporate building about the lift being too slow. And there was a huge focus on what do we do to make the lift faster, and how much would it cost, and all that kind of stuff. And then the talk kind of goes on to how they resolved it, and they concluded that actually that the answer was to put mirrors in the lift. So they didn't need to make the lift faster, they just needed to put mirrors in the lift. And I just think things like that are really inspiring, in terms of sometimes we need to not focus on the problem itself, and think about there might be something else we can resolve that ultimately solves the problem. And yeah, so I find that quite inspiring, really, just to kind of um, just, I don't know, just get in touch with what's out there, really. There's so much now, isn't there, on social media and talks. And Brené Brown, for instance, is a huge, actually, if you're going to say anyone who inspires me, Brené Brown. She's actually a shame researcher, but she talks a lot about kind of the power of vulnerability, and as people kind of go out there, increase your self-awareness, and ultimately that will lead to your success, and success of the people around you.
Brilliant. And obviously it's been quite a journey. What's been your biggest learning, would you say, from setting up the business?
My biggest learning, I think it's about money. I think it's about, charge for what you're worth and the effort you put into it and your costs. Because we started this with a very much with passion. So it wasn't about let's go make some money. It was about, oh my God, this is amazing. Let's kind of share it with the world. And because we didn't have that sort of let's go make money head on, and we never have, we've kind of undercharged ourselves a little bit, which is I think has made the journey harder. And then when I look at other services who provide similar things and what they charge, I think, okay, well, that's how they've managed to develop more. And I think that if we had, rather than just sort of setting ourselves underneath, charging less than everybody else, if we'd actually charged what we probably should have charged, then we probably would have had more room for development and less challenges like being able to pay staff more and things like that. So that's definitely learning for me, and that's the learning I've passed on, because we get a lot of people who will ask us, would you do a consultation, or I'm setting up an equine business, or would you advise, and that kind of thing. And that's the one thing I always advise is like, think about what it actually costs you. Think about what you're worth, and charge appropriately for what you're worth and what it costs you, and actually the money you need to develop your business. Yeah.
I think it's a great lesson, especially for something like you're doing, where that if you can make money and grow, it's more accessible to more people, isn't it?
Well, ultimately, yeah, exactly.
And it's a common problem with business owners undervaluing what they do, underpriced, not being scared to actually put their prices up. It's very common.
Exactly. Yeah.
And obviously we've had challenges over the last few years. First of all, Brexit, then COVID, which I'm sure has been something that's hit you maybe in different ways to other businesses, and obviously the economy. What sort of changes have you made? What's happened to your business during those challenges?
Yeah, so during COVID, there was some guidance that came out for services for children, for vulnerable children and young people. And the message was clear, as much as you can, stay open, don't close. So we didn't close at all through COVID, and we kept going. And yeah, it was really hard because we worked with young people who were already vulnerable. We worked with young people who already had mental health issues. And when all of their other services just disappeared, and anything from their yoga therapy to their swimming lessons to their extra this or extra, things that they were doing outside of us. Particularly the ones who were only coming to us for, a few hours a week, and were doing lots of other things, the other hours of, in their week, and it all got cut. So we ended up with a lot of young people who were just coming to us and then going home and really, really struggling with their mental health. And whilst managing that and managing the sort of escalated behaviour, I guess, that came with that, we had staff who needed to be off. So we had staff who for instance, who were caring for older relatives, or who were particularly frightened about COVID, because we were dealing, yes, we were open, but we were also dealing quite, closely. We couldn't keep 2 meters apart for young people we were looking after. And so that wasn't going to be okay for everybody. So we were dealing with a reduced staff group with escalated behaviours and an increased group of young people. We actually had more referrals, I guess, in that time. And it was really hard to meet need, and there were some of our things we had to really put limitations on some of it, and that was difficult. But I think as services go, we're probably relatively less affected than a lot of other services, because no matter what, we had to keep going, and there wasn't anything that sort of we had to keep going. We're looking after vulnerable children and young people. There was no room for stopping, or no room for breath, taking a breath either. We just had to keep going. So, yeah.
Did it? I'd imagine it increased the amount of children and young people after COVID.
It certainly increased referrals, but because our capacity didn't increase, because we were struggling to recruit, it's not like we sort of became particularly bigger or anything. but we're definitely referrals increased, and we ended up having waiting lists, which we never want to do. We never want to have waiting lists, but sometimes you can't help it, of course. But yeah, we ended up having waiting lists, and for therapy, we ended up having a waiting list for over a year. But yeah, we've managed to kind of recover that since. But yeah.
And let's look into the future. So, over the next 5 years, what do you see are the challenges for what you do?
One of our biggest challenges is recruitment.
Okay.
We are a not-for-profit. We can't pay loads of money. We can't, partly because we don't charge loads of money. So we don't have the funds to compete against some of the larger, independent schools or whatever it might be. For teachers that are paid huge amounts and therapists that are paid huge amounts in private sector and that kind of thing. So one of our biggest challenges is recruitment. We're really keen to develop and expand, and as we develop and expand, hopefully that does mean that we can sort of, as we grow, we can pay more. But that is, yeah, our absolute biggest challenge is recruitment and retention. Because and part of the retention issue is also, I think when people hear about working at a therapeutic farm, they approach it with rose-tinted glasses. So we get a lot of people who might be living somewhere, 3 hours away and go, I'll relocate to Surrey just so I can work at this fantastic therapeutic farm. And then they come here, and either they then realize that the living here is too expensive, or they come here, start working, and then it gets to sort of a February day, and they've been told to F off a few many times, and it's very windy and rainy. And it's just like, actually the novelty's worn off a little bit. It's not so lovely and therapeutic all the time to work outside in the British weather with young people who, of course, really, really struggle with trusting adults. It takes a long time sometimes to build relationships with some of our young people because of how let down by the system they've been.
Yeah.
So it's not an easy job, and it really can be really hard. So obviously from our perspective, recruiting staff, retaining staff, paying staff, they are our biggest challenges.
Interesting. So I think a lot of businesses have struggled with that recently, recruiting and retaining. However,
Yeah.
it's even more important for you to have that continuity. So, and what about your aspirations for the next 5 years?
Well, I'm quite ambitious, really. I think I've been really fueled by, and this sounds really braggy, but I've been really fueled by some of our successes that have been quite huge. We have parents who say, like, I feel like you've saved, well, with quite a lot of certainty, actually, we have parents who say, you've saved my child's life. And it just kind of fuels you to want to do more of it. And that means that, yeah, it's fueled an ambition in us, really, that we want to keep looking at new venues and expanding. So but obviously you shouldn't expand too fast, because you need to make sure that making sure that the services are good quality and not take your eye off it, really. So yeah, the ambitions is about creating more Elysians, more in more areas. But we also have some creative ideas about how we're going to work with young people in the future, and we put some bids in with the local authority. One of them is working with young people who are so isolated and so highly anxious that they won't leave their room or won't leave their house. And we've kind of put in this proposal that for a model of a service where we come with animals. So we turn up with a dog or a hedgehog or a bearded dragon or a snake or whatever the young person's interested in, and use that kind of animal assisted therapy approach in engaging the young person. And of course, if you've got a dog, how much easier is it to get a young person to come out of their house because the dog needs to go out for a wee, or that kind of thing. So we have a whole kind of service spec and a bid that's gone in for doing slightly different things as well with children, people, and families. Yeah, I guess we just feel really passionate about what we do, and about what animals can bring to the lives of not just children and people, but the families as well, and feel quite ambitious about kind of expanding that offer.
Right, sounds brilliant. And if you could start again, is there anything you do differently?
Yeah, I do a little bit more research. I would definitely do a little bit more research about the field. So for instance, we obviously do children and people's placements for special education needs, and we didn't really know what was out. I mean, it was hard to find out anyway, but we didn't really know what we could become. So if I went 10 years back now and said that you can actually provide, placements for 1 day, 4 days without becoming a school, or you can actually, do longer programs, and EHCPs, children and people's plans, can fund it, for them to access you, then we would have started that sooner. So that was just gradually found out really through following passion bit, instead of having a little bit more of a strategic view.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that, I guess that's the key, is that's one of my learnings as well, is have a little bit more of a strategy, and have a little bit more of an informed strategy. So doing a little bit more research around what it is that you're actually wanting to provide, and what are the perimeters, what are the things that the directions you can go in, and within those areas, what is the market need. And I know this sounds really obvious, but we kind of went with our passion and our heart, and our, oh, this is good, and that will help this young person. And I think that's the trap you quite often fall into. You fall into your day-to-day, you're meeting your current customers' needs, and you go with your current customers' feedback, and you go with your current stakeholders' feedback, instead of kind of pausing and just having a kind of wider look at what you can do, and what the information around those potential avenues are, really.
So have you put something in place that you're doing that more regularly now?
Yeah, so it's been quite helpful to do this, to do, because part of my PhD is constantly writing different strategies, and I'm using it in my work all the time. So now, instead of let's just have a meeting, now it's like, okay, what are we trying to solve? What are we trying to aim for? And what is the strategy to get to there? And AI can be quite helpful as well sometimes. And if you need a kind of list of ideas sometimes, so now, generally speaking, like for instance, when we started a new site, earlier this year, straight away it was like, okay, we're going to start a new site. What is the business plan? Got that covered. What is the strategy for actually mobilization? And with each strategy comes, set of actions, some key performance indicators. And it all sounds, I mean, it can in some ways sound a bit sort of corporate and a bit arsey, but it actually is so important. It really gives you that focus, and it's quite hard to have focus when you're on the ground. I've going off on one a little bit here, but I've kind of done every role within the organization. I've been the admin, I've been the person on the floor, I've done every role within the organization as we've started, and sometimes I've done 10 at the same time. And that is the time, and then that is what it's like when you're starting your own business. But that does not allow for a lot of room for just pausing and taking a slightly wider view. And I guess that's what I would have like to have done earlier, but I'm still glad that we've kind of done it at this point, and it is really helpful. So yeah.
Okay. And what about let's take a couple of years ago, your 18-year-old self. What advice would you give your 18-year-old self now?
Um, I would give my 18-year-old self, what would I give my 18-year-old self advice? I would say, go for it. One of the things that was holding me back is I always felt, well, you need money to make money, but actually, no, there are so many kind of pots of money out there. There's so many places you can ask for bids for. In previous roles, I've started with nothing and applied for various kind of pots of money to create projects and teams and stuff like that. So for young people, there's like Princess Trust, there's like a million different kinds of initiatives you can apply for. So if you've got a good idea, if you have a good business idea, or even a good idea that you think this could be something that would help people, then find support, or find pots of money out there to apply for the money to do it. And yeah, that's what I would tell myself, my 18-year-old self, only a few years ago. I would, yeah, definitely just kind of say that it's, you don't need to be super smart or intelligent or experienced to have an idea. You just need to be good at asking for help. From people who might know, how, say for instance, you're not sure how to write a bid. Well, there's free courses out there. There's adult education courses out there, and free courses online, and there's lots of tips and hints on social media that will help you through. And it's all about kind of believing in yourself, really. That's what it's about. It's about self-belief and feeling passionate about something.
Brilliant. New projects. Sounds like you're working on some things at the moment. Is there anything you would like to elaborate on at all?
No, I mean, I think I've kind of talked about the new potential projects, and we are very much in our new projects, in that we've recently opened 2 new sites. Um, I'm always looking for new things that we can do for certain, so a good example of kind of new ideas that we're sort of looking for is our provision mainly functions in term time. So outside of term time, including 6 weeks in the summer holidays, we have 3 farms and, a whole range of animals and, quite a few staff, because there's still a few staff here during holiday time, because a lot of our staff are full time, not just term time. And that, I just feel like there's some unused assets there, if you like, in terms of what we could be achieving in the holiday. So we are doing like some workshops for young people who are in care, or young people who are very anxious. But I do feel that we could utilize that more. And I'd love to hear from professionals who, for instance, can kind of see some ideas that they might like to work with us on, because we do have, I mean, this farm that I'm sat in at the moment is over 100 acres, and we have lots of space during the school holidays to do creative projects. It could be anything, really, anything that you could use a farm setting for that would benefit people.
Brilliant. Okay, and how do people get hold of you?
So we have a website. The website is elysianuk.org. See, that says something about our ambition, doesn't it? When we made the website name, Elysian UK, because our name is Elysian Animal Assisted Therapy and Learning. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, and obviously we have a website, which is elysianuk.org. And there's some contact details on there, and you also see where the sites are as well, and there's information about what kind of services we provide.
Fantastic. Charlotte, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you for spending the time in today's interview.
Thank you for having me.
I wish you all the success in the future. I think anybody who's watching this will want you to absolutely succeed, because not only is it a great business, you're doing a lot of good out there. So all the very best in the future, and thank you again for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Okay.
Take care for now. Bye.